No sound, Skipper. Skipper ain't got no sound. And that's really disappointing for everybody else if all they have to do is listen to me. But I promise you, this is going to be far more entertaining than watching the State of the Union address. Oh, there's Skipper. Are you back? Skipper, still no sound, Skipper. There you go. There's something. Nope. We are a professional show, ladies and gentlemen. This is not Juan's fault. This is completely Skipper's fault.
Can you hear me?
Kinda.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to try it with the new password here. The problem is getting camera access through Apple. Don't ask.
I'm glad we're live. Nope, nothing, Skipper. Nothing. Skipper is going to leave and come back. I read live program. Yes. Live program language. That's there we go.
You got me good?
That's about time. That's what happens when you let a Marine try to run something.
I had a plug that fell out, and apparently it doesn't work on the fly, so I had to log out and log back in. But we're here. And
hey, welcome to Veteran Nation, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome. We've got a great guest that's going to be on with us today. TC, how you doing?
His time's been reduced by about 5 minutes waiting for you.
That's we'll get it all figured out. You know, sometimes technical stuff happens when we do these live shows, but it makes it a little bit exciting. It keeps us on our toes, that's for sure. So, TC, how have you been this week? Watching the news.
I'm good. I've been watching the news. I was really excited. Can I do some shameless self-promotion?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
So, like everybody knows, like well, not everybody, but anybody who's been watching knows I've been selling coffee, which Skipper keeps failing to order. I don't know what he's got going on over there. He's got a government job, so it's not like he's doing anything. But I got these new little products in.
Nice.
They're little stainless steel shot glasses, and they're I don't know what kind of coating it is, but then they're etched with my personal podcast on it. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, that podcast is Minnesota Black Crow Regiment, which you can find on Rumble
and on YouTube's.
Oh yeah. See, I love singing your praises. That's the good thing about you and me. I think our interests always tend to align. So,
it's funny because I probably mention our show together at least twice on every one of my shows.
I noticed.
I don't know what that's doing for our viewers. Juan will have to track that for us.
So, have you been watching what's been happening in the Ukraine?
Are you asking me that seriously? I know you know I've been watching.
I know you have. I got to do the lead-in question. You know, that's how this works.
I've been watching in light of Wag the Dog, the movie, and we mentioned that 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
And that's not to say that I believe that what's happening in Ukraine is not actually happening. I don't think this is happening on a soundstage in Hollywood or somewhere else. But I've been watching in light of the historicity of, especially over the last 20 years. And I've been watching people who should be ostensibly patriotic conservatives or even libertarians just clamor to get on board with going to war in the Ukraine, enmesh and embroil the United States military in this for any number of reasons. And I've been absolutely disgusted at the war hawkish mentality after what we've been through since September 11th of 2001. And it's like we cannot, the conservative right, if you will, the Republican right, if you will, doesn't seem to be able to withdraw themselves from the morass. I don't know what he's saying.
Oh, we're having technical difficulties with our guest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I pay too much attention to the colonel. That's my problem. No one would believe that's ever been a case for me. But as what I was saying is we just seem to want to always be enmeshed in a war. And quite frankly, I'm kind of to that point, and I've been coming that way for quite some time. I am an isolationist in many sense, not in the Neville Chamberlain appeasement way, but more of a Monroe Doctrine sort of way, in which we need to be concerned about what we're doing here in the United States, here in the Western Hemisphere, and not be as concerned about what's going on over there. And chiefly because what's happening in the Ukraine right now is a direct result of very, 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 not just bad, but wicked foreign policy on the part of the Obama administration, who orchestrated the overthrow of a democratically elected government, whether we liked them or not, in the Ukraine in 2014. Nazis, like I'm not using that term the way it's used today by the left. Literal Nazis, literal Nazis in the Ukraine were put into power by leftist progressives in the United States government by the state, who then turned around and used violence to oppress opposition to their illegal coup. And no one said a word. But now all of a sudden this is a humanitarian issue that we have to get involved in. Why aren't we going to war with China then for what they're doing to their Muslim population? Why aren't we going into Sri Lanka, or not Sri Lanka? Well, yeah, Sri Lanka. Why aren't we going into Jakarta? If all of this is humanitarian, there are so many thousands of other places we could be going right now.
What amazes me with all this is how many times the American media just in the last couple of days has been fooled about things that are easily researchable, easily, you see these videos where they say, oh, this is a Ukrainian and a Russian. It turns out it's Israeli and Palestine. It's from 8 years ago. And they're just falling for these things because they're trying to get a scoop. But I do want to bring in our guest right now because it appears that we have him up. This is a person who I've worked for in Afghanistan. He is a retired infantry officer from the Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Jim Franks.
What was his rank?
He retired as a major.
Major, on behalf of everyone in Veteran Nation, we'd like to apologize ahead of time for any detrimental effect there has been to you in your personal life for having been associated with Skipper in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, Mike, give me a thumbs up. You can hear me good?
Oh, we got you.
Okay. So I brought my notes. I don't know. Let's see if I can. Oh, there we go. I wrote them in crayon. That way everybody can. I'm prepared. So right there, that's Ukraine good, Russian bad, more tanks Russian, less tanks Ukraine, vodka equal amounts. And then I drew an operational plan here. It's also a work of art. That's a bird right there flying. It's like Picasso without skill. So we have tanks running. You can lead with infantry or lead with tank. You want to pick there. So that being said, Mike, you and I discussed some questions last night, and let's get this things started and see how it goes. So my first podcast ever. So
I think as an infantry officer, I think we would like to know what has surprised you about the current situation.
Well, I did a little research today, and so I looked. Both countries use conscription heavily, and I was trying to look at their training plans, because if you want to know what would surprise me, it would really kind of start with, well, what's their training plan? So both countries do use conscription. Usually it's a 12-month service. Best I could tell, looking at both sites, was a 3 to 4 week training program for each one. I know that Russian conscripts have traditionally been treated pretty poorly. Ukraine, a lot better, assuming. But so I think what has surprised me the most is actually, outside of the training, and that will lead to the tactics we'll discuss here in a minute, has actually been the what seems like operational failures on the Russian planners. I mean, I'm not sure how you sit in your country and know that you're going to invade for 6 to 8 weeks right now, and your tanks start to run out of fuel. That's surprising to me. I think the other thing that was surprising to me was this past weekend watching the Ukrainians and the Russians fight over a bridge. Not sure why there would be a bridge still standing if I was a Ukrainian and wanted to put water between myself and the tanks. So I think there's been some surprising things. I don't think it's that surprising that the Russians didn't get it as quick as they wanted to. It's just different terrain than I'm sure many veterans on here were probably in Iraq. Wide open desert in the initial invasion, and here it's not. I mean, it's rivers, bridges, villages they have to work through. So I don't think that surprised me as much. Like I said, I think the biggest surprise has been the operational failure of the Russians in not having fuel pushed forward. I don't know how true those statements are. We're all watching the same Google satellite maps and websites, but it seems to be the case that, I don't know, maybe there's a G4 somewhere that's being taken outside right now and visited by some friends from Putin.
That's
ahead,
that's a pretty good assessment, because as you were aware, I was a logistics officer, and you have to be able to not just fight, but also move and communicate. And not having gas means you're not moving. And at least your tanks aren't, and that's a very big force multiplier. TC, do you have any questions for the Major?
No, my my expertise in this area. Wait, I don't. Do I have my expertise on this is I'm just a loudmouth. I'm looking at this there again, and everybody knows this. I'm looking at this through the lens of geopolitical, sociocultural ramifications, and I'm actually shocked to hear. I didn't realize that the Russians were running out of fuel for their tanks. But that might be because they're sending all their fuel over here, because we can't seem to get off of our dependence of Russian oil right now, ironically. I'm wondering, Major, if you think that what we're experiencing right now is in some way, shape, or form, some form of obfuscation with the ramping up of media attention to this, to keep the American people's eyes off of something that's going on domestically. Or am I asking you a question that's too loaded for your first podcast?
Well, I would just say this. I'm gonna kind of speak to avoid those things, because my honest assessment is, first of all, it's Western Europe, and I've been asked multiple times, where was the next war going to occur? Just a little, geopolitical big time background. You know, we can pull out maybe one or two countries that China's invaded. Not very many. Russia invaded a lot of people. They grow, they expand. Germany finally became a country and started 2 world wars within 30 years. So I think that, it's Western Europe. It's about time that they were going to start another war. They've been running one about every 70 years for the past 300 or 400 years. So, and I would also, and I'll say this, I'm not going to talk to anybody's politics or anything other than just to say that Putin is not stupid. And despite characterizations of other media outlets that saying he's savvy is bragging on it, he pulled a Machiavellian move. Pure Machiavelli. And I don't know that any president, whatever party, would want this put in their lap and would handle it any better or any worse than the current president. Because this is a European problem. And this European problem is a continuation of the Great Game. Well, not the Great Game. We know what that involved India and everywhere else. But it is a continuation of the European Great Game. So Russia expands, and we pushed NATO right up to their borders. That was done under a Republican president. And
every president since the first Bush promised we would not expand the NATO borders one inch to the east, and every president since then has expanded it nation by nation to the east until we're where we are now.
Yeah, and where we are now is Russia has taken the Ukraine. At the tactical level, both services are conscripts. The defense and fighting on your home terrain favors that conscript army. They now have a cause. There is no better cause than someone breaking into your home. No matter what your political leanings are or your personal morals, somebody breaks into your home, unless you are the most diehard pacifist ever, you are going to engage. So I think right now the tactical environment is actually favoring the Ukraine, because I don't think the Russian conscripts who, are from different dialects, different areas, are really that motivated to be fighting a fight. Usually invasions are carried out by professional level forces, professional armies. Mercenaries did it back in the Middle Ages, through the Renaissance, etc. So, and I mean, like I said, there's 1,000 different opinions and 1,000 different stories. This is just mine. But I think that the tactical side right now is favoring the Ukrainians. I've heard a couple of things like the Russians don't want to fight during the daylight. I mean, they don't want to fight at night. They don't know how to use MVGs. I don't know how true that is. The one thing about it is we don't have the Russian general staff standing in front of the American press every day pointing to big blue arrows about, well, here's where we're invading Iraq from the east and from the north and wherever. We're not getting those type of briefings. So I think there's some truth to come out a little bit later, but I think the Ukrainians are going to hold. But I think in the end, they're going to decapitate the government of the Ukraine. And I believe that Russia has set itself up to handle an insurgency that is well armed and well trained, even better than what they faced in Chechnya, in Grozny in 1994. And that was some pretty brutal fighting.
And one thing that has really stood out for me is, I guess, would be the difference as to how we fight war. Because Americans, one of the first things that we're always going to do is establish air superiority. And I don't believe the Russians have ever been able to establish that in this, even today. And they should be able to on paper. So for me, that was a bit shocking. For you as an infantry officer, how does that change the game?
Well, it's drones. Drones have changed the game for everybody. It is probably the number one threat that keeps force protection officers up overseas in Africa, CENTCOM, AFRICOM, PACOM, the drone is the scariest threat. So, air supremacy is now going to become air superiority and maybe air dominance over a certain locale until the drones get up. They're cheap, they're replaceable, and I mean, the technology behind those things is amazing. Just so everybody understands a little bit of my background, I retired. I worked at the Pentagon for 2 years for an organization, the Joint IED Defeat Organization. And then I took a job in Germany where I trained military forces. I returned back to the United States in 2019, and I still provide training to military forces. So I will tell you that, yeah, they can knock down aircraft all day, but the drone is the scariest thing out there. I mean, and that's just what we saw the footage of it hitting the tanks. I don't know if that kind of answers your question there, Mike, but yeah.
It absolutely does, because it very much is a force multiplier. By you can send up drone after drone, and if they get shot down, you're not putting any forces or any people at risk. So it's very much a killer that's out there, and that was one thing that we used quite effectively. As you and I being in Afghanistan, we were able to use all that drone footage and just to coordinate so many things. So I think there's a lot there to what you're saying. TC, get anything on this?
I'm not the expert on the military aspect of this. I'm a vet, obviously, and I was with the 82nd Airborne, so I'm supposed to have all the tactical knowledge of everything in the world ever. And if you don't believe me, just ask any 82nd Airborne vet, and they'll tell you they have all that tactical knowledge. But that's just not where I'm at. I think my biggest concern is I'm looking at this from the perspective of, one, the American people, and two, what lengths are we willing to go to? Because Jim, if I may, Major,
just call me Jim. I quit being Major when I retired.
I try to always defer to senior rank, except for Juan and Skipper.
One thing that you said, TC, that me and Jim, when we talked yesterday about coming on the show, that I think you kind of got to was, what can we expect the Russians to respond to America with? And Jim had some pretty interesting things to say about that. If you want to take it over, Jim.
My big concern is I had a conversation, and Skipper, you saw my live, I think, yesterday a little bit. Everybody's like, oh, we got to go over there and intervene, because if we don't, this is going to bring the United States and Russia to the cusp of a nuclear war. And I'm like, no, American intervention in this will escalate this to the brink of nuclear war. It absolutely will. And we've had both our current president and Putin have said they're not afraid to use nukes. When in the history, just people have to understand that this is a European conflict, and we're going to go insert ourselves into the situation that is not a NATO, when we can debate the philosophical importance of NATO all day long. The Ukraine is not a NATO nation. And even if it were, how far do you insert yourself into the situation knowing that nuclear conflict is a reality if you do that? But now the media is saying a nuclear war could end global climate change. So I don't even know how to feel about this right now, because everybody wants global climate change to end. So maybe we should be pushing for a nuclear war. I don't know.
Well, we've intervened twice already in the European continent in the past 115 years. Whether we liked it or not, despite whatever other political parties were saying, we've already intervened over there twice. And we've maintained that intervention, So I think there's arguments to be made for both sides. But I think nukes, I think they're great for island nations, that it's not going to flow across and block your land movements in war. And I'm not saying that because we attacked Japan, but nukes work better where they're not going to slow you up. And that generally means an island area. If you launch a nuke anywhere in Europe right now, you're basically cutting off each side of the planet from a land bridge from Asia to Europe. So I don't know that that would be the case I would worry about. I think that some people are making more of that than they would. I think the real, if you want to talk about something that's being downplayed, I think it would be the cyber piece. I think cyber is a lot like, it used to be NBC in our day, and now it's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and something else, explosive. But we'll just use NBC, nuclear, biological, and chemical. But to me, cyber warfare is almost like a biological attack. You can design the perfect biological weapon, but once it gets out in the population, it is going to let nature take its course. It's going to mutate. It's going to attack things you didn't expect it to. And if I was going to see something that's going to spill outside the borders, I think it would be a cyber attack, much like the vaunted Stuxnet that was carried in, air-gapped across into a system, and then somehow got out from that air-gapped system. So imagine if we lost another electrical grid right now with high inflation and everything else. And the question is, has it truly been clarified that a cyber attack is an Article 5 violation? Is ransomware attacks or denial of service on MSNBC News, Fox News, the President White House, is that an attack? And I'm sure there are smart people, I would hope, thinking about this. So I don't know that I would bet on the nuclear. I would bet on the cyber. And again, it's already being put into tactical play. The U.S. military is highly reliant on computers now. So anybody we work with has, by default, almost become reliant or also adopt computer technology. I saw it when I was working in Europe. They had to come over and be able to work on our systems. So by default, we're creating possible ways for the cyber attack to occur. I mean, we're talking about Russian hackers having the ability to hack soldiers' cell phones. I talk with units that are deploying to certain areas of the world. And I tell them, you need to just leave your real phone at home, get yourself a burner phone, and don't link any bank accounts to it. Don't link Facebook to it. Just use it to text, WhatsApp, whatever, video, phone calls. Mm-hmm. But you don't put anything in there that you don't want stolen, because that phone becomes hot the moment you walk off the plane in Europe. So that, again, that's that other aspect. And we've become so reliant on these. These here are handheld missile guiders for the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. They're going to bring the missile to your location. There was a Ukrainian battalion that got into a position a few years ago. This was open source. They broke out their cell phones. Remember when we used to have to push break to talk? I know I got some old guys out there. We have to do break to talk on the radios. Remember those? That was so we wouldn't be DF'd. Now using these, that unit was DF'd and blown off the map. Not a patrol, not a squad, a battalion. So
that's, a lot of stuff you were saying there rings true to me, because, as I've talked on this show, I was in the UAE for a year, and that was the first thing they told us when we were going to go, is the moment you walk in country, your cell phone is compromised. So, being able to show how that links to military operations, I think is rather eye-opening. And I don't know if a lot of our military members can survive without their phones. So I'm glad to hear that you're giving me the advice to use a burner. A lot has been made of the javelins and the stingers that we've given to them. Do you think those have been significant in terms of the Ukrainians being able to mount a defense?
Oh, huge. I mean, honestly, allegedly, I heard a rumor years ago when the Javelin first got fielded, they took it to NTC. The vaunted, I know I got a bunch of people here in the Army. You went up against the best trained Russian military in the world at Fort Irwin, I'm sure, for 30 glorious days, and maybe understood a little bit about what happened when you got smacked around for a good cause. We trained, supposedly the first time the Javelin showed up at NTC, two guys wiped out a tank company. And the 10th ACRCO actually went into the CG and was like, hey, I can't really train your staffs if your people are killing my tanks from that far away. He said, well, you need to come up with ways to defeat it, just like the Russians will. I don't know what those ways are, but I will say this, that the Javelin is huge. I think the Stinger is a big game changer as well, but I think the Javelin is more because I'm one of these guys, if you're not standing on it, you don't own it. So you can fly over it all day long, drop a few bombs, but if you ain't occupying the area with tanks or infantry fighting vehicles, you don't really own it. You can control it when an aircraft is over it, but that's as far as it goes.
Do you have any predictions for how you think that this is going to play out in the next several weeks?
I think the Russians are going to surround Kyiv. I believe the Russians are actually going to try and cut it off and decapitate the government. I think the wild card is going to be just how much the Russians are willing to bleed. The Ukrainian military is a much better trained, much more organized service country than what they faced in Chechnya. In Chechnya, they faced some brutal soldiers, brutal warriors. Chechens are hardcore mountain fighters, known for it throughout history. But the Ukrainians are known fighters, and they are better organized, better equipped, and better trained, and they're fighting for a purpose. And, if you look back in 94 when the Russians went into Grozny, the Chechens let a whole battalion get downtown and celebrate and then basically killed them to a man. And again, somebody can quote me and find that maybe it was a company, but I'm pretty sure it was a battalion that they let drive in and declare victory. And then they massacred them. One particularly brutal video of that shows them executing 2 Russian prisoners. One they shot in the back when he tried to run, and the other one they held down and cut his throat. And they filmed it bragging. So, but I think the level of brutality the Russians are willing to face against the Ukrainians is going to be the unknown factor. And I think it goes to the favor of the Ukrainians. People want to have a conspiracy theory. What if an unknown unit attacks a Latvian military unit in Latvia? Happens to be dressed like Russians. False flags could work to get Russia into the Ukraine. False flags could also work to get NATO into the Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if Putin's made that calculation.
I did see where the Ukrainian government was releasing prisoners who have soldier experience. I think a very smart move on their end because you want to get every ounce of experience as possible. Don't know if you heard that story or if you have any assessment on that.
You know what? My assessment is really easy to make when I'm sitting here, a few thousand miles away and my country's not being invaded. I don't know that that would be the first decision I would go to. I don't think that all the cards have been played by the Ukraine right now, just like all the cards have not been played by the Russians. It's striking to me that they've got a 40-mile long convoy that was stalled. I would like to really know why that wasn't target number one of every drone and aircraft you could put in the air, and every piece of artillery and every javelin. But again, the Ukrainians are not stupid, and we're getting a one-sided press view of it. I could also see that being a Russian tactical pause right now, because it's not going the way they want it to. That is obvious.
And TC, there is one thing that this man taught me. And in Afghanistan, he taught me, if you want to know how good your unit is, hang out in the smoke pit, because then you'll learn.
Yeah.
It's like a given. You have to talk about the smoke pit every single time we get on here.
I've actually done that on the show.
That's where a level of geniosity comes through.
Jim, I've actually done that on the show. I've brought cigars here. As you remember, we did, Cigars Sunday in the smoke pits, and I brought them onto the show just to kind of bring that feel, of just veterans talking. I really enjoyed hearing your take on a lot of these things. I always found that your outlook was unique, outside the box, and also very grounded. So thank you very much for joining us. Is there anything that we didn't discuss today that you think we should be talking about?
No, I mean, we can go on about, there's so many different levels. This TC was hitting on it, the geopolitical level. How did we get here? And I tell people this. It doesn't matter how we got here. We're here. Another country has been invaded. And I would say that it's kind of sad that, just because they're not a NATO member nation, is it okay for another Sudetenland to take happen? When Hitler rolled right into Czechoslovakia and said, hey, it's mine. There's German-speaking people here. History repeats itself. I think that's the biggest lesson to learn from here. And an argument has been made for the strategic implications to Russia, but I think there's also some strategic implications. And I do agree with TC. The Europeans need to address how they want to handle this problem. We may end up in it. We're already in it, folks. Gas has gone up 20 cents a gallon. The next cyber attack is over the horizon. And we're already in it. We haven't started throwing lead yet. So, and hopefully we don't get to that. And hopefully the Russians will wake up. But, I don't know that using NATO Article 5 as an excuse to avoid the fact that Russia just decided to take over another country. And, Hitler did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Austria, Hungary, other countries did that to kick off World War I. So I think it's just sad that we are where we are. But I appreciate the forum. I appreciate the interaction with everybody. Maybe I gave you something to think about, or maybe I gave you something to walk off and go, man, that guy is completely effed up. And you can say that because
I've been doing this with
Instagram.
Skipper. There's no chance that I'm going to critique you that way.
So. Yeah, both of you have had to deal enough of me over the years. So, TC, before we wrap up, you want to get some plugs in?
Yeah, you can check out my content, my personal content at Minnesota Black Robe Regiment on YouTube and Rumble. And if you're looking for coffee, that's better than smoke pit coffee. Not that you drink much coffee in the smoke pit, but you can always where's it at? There we go. Camera angle. You can reach out to me, or if you just need a really fancy, durable shot glass, you can always let me know. TC Pearson at protonmail.com. I'm doing a lot of stuff this week, Skipper. You're going to like it all. I got a gal coming on that's the medical dissident. She's a nurse practitioner, and she sat down with me to tell her story. And tomorrow I'm telling the story of a gal who was fired by the Mayo Clinic for refusing to get the jab. And I'm going to be with her and a group of other people from the Mayo Clinic in the Rochester, Minnesota area as we go out. And I'm going to record them laying their scrubs down on the steps of one of the most famous medical institutions in the world. So that'll be tomorrow evening. That'll be coming out. So check it out, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Skipper, as always, thanks for having me on. I think Juan's got something fun for us to end this on with a laugh, because damn it, I need it.
Oh, I bet Army cried. I wonder if Army cried. Math.
I needed that.
With the videos. Always fun. Well, for all the fans out there, you can always join us on Facebook, Veteran Nation. We're there. I have my Twitter at Vet Nation Show. We do have, we're in the waiting list for Truth Social, Veteran Nation on Truth Social as soon as it goes live. And I want to say, special thank you to Jim Franks for joining us. I hope you come back, especially if this lasts. Would love to get your opinion on, further developments. And for all of the audience for joining us, thank you for being worth serving.